Already know it's story time, so make sure you grab a snack, sit back, relax, and let's get on with the chisme. When I was younger, probably like around 4 or 5, I had a couple of paranormal stuff that I experienced. Now, I don't really know what it was, but the first time that this happened, I was at my grandparents' house, and me and my mom both lived there because she was a young mother. I remember the first time it happened, we were home alone because my grandparents were out of town and my uncle went with them. So it was just me and my mom at the house. There was nobody else at all. Both me and my mom slept in the same room, and this one night, for some reason, our door was open. Outside of the doorway, there's this hallway that leads to my grandparents' room, a bathroom, and a guest room. I remember I was up laying in bed, and from my point of view, I saw like this really tall black shadow figure kind of speed walking to my grandparents' room, right? So I just looked at my mom and I was like, "Hey ma, who was walking to Momo and Popo's room?" That's my nickname for my grandma and my grandpa, by the way. After I said that, she got all panicked. Now, from her point of view, she knew that we were alone and that nobody else was supposed to be there. So my mom got up, she grabbed a knife, and she was like, "Stay here." My mom left the room and she went to go check around the house, but nobody was there. My mom grabbed a knife, she got up, she went to go check the rest of the house, and there was nothing there. The second time this happened, I was probably around the same age, and me and my mom were still living with my grandparents, and they were there, but everyone was sleeping. Me and my mom were still awake, and she decided she wanted to go get water. Now, she knew the kitchen, so she didn't need to turn on the lights, and there was also a little bit of light coming from our sliding door. I remember she got up and she left the room, and I followed her, and while I stood in the hallway waiting for her to come back, she was filling up water, and as she was coming back, I saw hands, multiple, probably like 5 or 6, grab her. They were like black shadow hands, and they were so clear and distinct. So of course, as probably any other kid would do, I ran into the room instantly crying into the bed sheets. My mom, not knowing what happened, of course she was confused, and she walked into the room. She sat on the bed and she was talking to me, and she was like, "What's wrong? Like, why are you crying?" She was like, "¿Qué te pasó?" Eventually, after crying a little bit, I finally explained to her what had happened. And my mom just stayed looking at me, and she was like, "No, I didn't feel anything or see anyone." If you don't know, there is a saying that dogs and little kids can see paranormal things, so that's probably why she could see everything and her mom couldn't.
Story time about how my crush threatened to have me beat up if I didn't leave him alone. Disclaimer is not my story time, on Instagram. Just started college and I made the biggest mistake of my life. Told one of my classmates who my crush was. This man told everyone behind my back. Later that night, we were celebrating our classmate's birthday. When I showed up, my crush was already there with a new girl. At this point, he and I had never really talked, but I did stare at him a lot. Suddenly, my crush walks over to me and grabs my arm really hard. Then he said, I quote, "You know I'm not attracted to you, right? You're never gonna have a chance with me." And that his girl was willing to beat me up if I didn't leave him alone. I was humiliated and mortified. I immediately left the party crying. How am I supposed to show up to class next week? Should I pretend like nothing happened? Why does he hate me?
I saw a video of a girl asking if you've ever had a friend that just hated you, and I thought this was my time to shine. So I went through a lot of different like friend groups and best friends and stuff throughout my whole life, but I had one friend that I had for 7 years and one friend that I had for 4. And the friend I had for 7 years I started becoming friends with this other girl in high school, and I just introduced the two of them together, so then all 3 of us became a trio. And one weird thing about my school was that we didn't have, like, people weren't just, like, friends with just one other person. Like, there weren't a whole lot of that. It was a lot of big groups. So even though we weren't popular, everybody, like, knew of us because we were that weird group that, like, the weird trio. Like, I'm telling you, even teachers knew not to separate us because we were going to, like, back together. So fast forward to senior prom, we're going to call them Rachel and Ashley. Rachel and Ashley went to Ashley's house and decided that they were going to get ready together, and I got ready at my house. Now, this made sense because Ashley lived pretty far out, and I had a hair appointment in the middle of the day, so it didn't really make sense to drive all the way out there, drive back into town, drive back out there. I just got ready at my house. And if you've seen my prom pictures, you know I did Lady Gaga's Met Gala look for prom. Skipping blush and highlight because I'm doing that in a different video. So I finished my makeup, and I text a picture of it to Rachel. And she's like, "Oh, you need to take that off. You cannot wear that. That is embarrassing. Like, we do not want to be seen with that." And I'm just like, no, like, I spent 2 hours on it. I did not have time to take it off. I was like, no. And she was like, okay, well, then we're not going to come get you. Now, my parents had my car because one of their cars was in the shop. And I was like, you have to come get me or I can't get there. So begrudgingly, they come to my house and they pick me up. And then we meet all of our parents to go do pictures. Now, when we get there, they take one picture with me. Also, no, the whole drive over, they did not talk to me or acknowledge me. So they take one picture with me, then I get sprayed by a sprinkler and I get soaked. So now I'm crying. They do not care. They have better things to do. And then at this point, the parents are finding this weird because I'm being like completely overlooked, and that's never happened before. at least that they've seen. So all the parents are like, are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. So we finish pictures and say farewell to our parents. So then we go to dinner. It's the most awkward thing ever. No one talks to me. So I'm just like, okay, when I get to prom, I'll find other people. At prom, some other girls hang out with us, so it's fine. It doesn't feel too awkward. Then when we get in the car to leave, Ashley looks at Rachel and is like, hey, do you want to spend the night at my house? And Rachel's like, yeah, I'd love to. So Ashley goes, great. We'll drop Allie off and then we will go to my house. And that's exactly what happened.
Really nervous about making this video, so please hear me out before you judge me in the comments. My first boyfriend was half black, half white, and he would call me the N-word all the time. For a little context, I was homeschooled and very sheltered my entire life. I lived in a little bubble. I moved out of my parents' house at 20 and I was just very culturally unaware. Like, I knew that the F word was bad as much as I knew that the N word was bad, but that was about it. After being called the N-word almost every day of our relationship for 2 years, which also was very physically abusive, obviously the word started to become part of my vocabulary. I never used the word in a disrespectful tone though, even though it's a disrespectful word. You know how you can be like, you're such a, or you can be like, that's my bitch. Yeah, it was like, nah, that's mine. You know what I mean? Like, it was in a loving way, even though it was a really bad word. So back then, I was like, I can say the N-word because my boyfriend is of color, so obviously I'm not racist. Yeah, I know, that's embarrassing. When I say of color, I mean this boy was really whitewashed, okay? He was adopted by white people, raised by white people in Montana, where there's about 5 people of color out there. Yeah, but he wanted to identify as a person of color more than anything in the world. Like, he wanted to be a person of color. Like, he did not want to be associated with white people. I no longer say the N-word, and when I look back on my younger self, it just makes me cringe in absolute embarrassment that I would just say it and be like, oh, I can because my boyfriend's of color. Like, girl, what was wrong with you? Moral of the story, don't be dumb like me and be like, oh, I can say the N-word because my boyfriend or my uncle is of color. Like, babes, that's not how it works. Then you're gonna look back and you're gonna be mortified of yourself. Story time on how I got stuck on the water slide on the cruise. Go on this water slide, you have to weigh a bare minimum of 120 pounds. First day that I tried to go on the water slide, he weighed me and I only weighed 119.6 pounds. And he told me to go eat a sandwich and come back and I could try again. And I literally went and ate a sandwich and tried again, except for I still did not make the requirement. Next day, as I was walking past the water slide, I asked if I could try again, and for some reason, I magically hit 120 pounds. It was one of those water slides where the floor drops out from underneath you and you just free fall. I go on the slide and I have just enough weight to make it to the top ridge of the first loop, but I have to scoot my butt over it to make it down. On the second loop, I did not make it. I didn't have enough weight, so I went up and then I went down backwards. But when I went backwards, I went right past the door. So I was under the assumption that I got stuck in the only part of the water slide where there was no escape. I start panicking. I sit up in the tube. It's humid. It's hard to breathe in there. Water's rushing. Water's in my contacts. I'm trying to see. I realize that I'm in the clear part of the tube. So I look down. I'm on the part of the tube that hangs off the ship. Hundreds of feet down below is the ocean. And I'm like, don't look that way. So I look up at the guy who sent me down and I'm like, hey, I like clear the fog off the tube and I'm like banging. I'm like, how do I get out of here? I'm freaking out because in front of me is an upward hike on the water slide. I'm in a loop, okay? And I'm at the bottom of the loop. In my mind, it's up and up. I don't know how I'm supposed to get out. Well, he's pointing this way. He's like, go that way. So I moved this way into the water slide, which is like pitch black because it was dark and covered. And that is when I found the escape door. And the guy opened it up and he let me out. Gets me out and he was like, are you okay? And I literally look at him and I was like, that was not fun. And then I just left. And I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, but that was horrifying.